Now, I don't really think I have to explain who and what Tom and Jerry are, but if you don't have any knowledge on these animation legends, then I shall give you a quick rundown. Tom and Jerry, no, not the one from long time ago, are a cat and mouse duo often trying to outwit one another. The formula similarly being that Tom and Jerry would chase each other and comically would do it with over-the-top cartoon violence. And it's often said that they perfected it, along with their bizarre friendship. Tom and Jerry are cartoon legends as they have been an inspiration for other cartoon classics like Chuck Jones, Wile E. Coyote, and Roadrunner cartoons. Tom and Jerry had several runs throughout the ages and evolved with the times, but like many things, they will never be the classics. Now, after such a legacy, Tom and Jerry have branched into many mediums: board games, comics, and even video games. Now, Tom and Jerry have had several video games throughout the 90s and 2000s, and there was even talk for an MMO once. Like many license-based games though, not many people talk about them fondly. But before all that, MGM, the original studio that created them, sold the IP and majority of its assets to Turner Entertainment, aka Warner Brothers. Since Warner's run with the franchise, they have made many direct-to-video animated movies and a handful of TV series. But at the very beginning, Warner actually made a theatrical film, calling it simply Tom and Jerry the Movie. The film didn't go that well. Many film critics disliked the movie and it barely turned in a profit. The film being made on a $3.5 million budget and it only turned in $3.6 million. Over the years though, it's developed somewhat of a cult following. Me personally, I have mixed respect for it. I've watched it several times now and I agree that the film really shouldn't be Tom and Jerry related and majority of the songs are terrible. I do feel that some of the criticisms were a little harsh, but in the end the movie isn't that great. Don't hate it, nor do I ignore its existence, but I have no ill feelings towards it in the long run. So, what does this have to do with this episode of Retrospect? For crying out loud, the name of the episode is Tom and Jerry Frantic Antics. What does the movie have to do with it? Well, despite the title and the cover of the game, it's actually an adaptation of the Tom and Jerry the movie. Interestingly, there were video games titled appropriately Tom and Jerry the Movie for the Sega Game Gear, but this game came out roughly a year after the movie was released. Was this supposed to coincide with the home video release, or did they change the cover and title of the game to fool people into checking it out since the movie itself wasn't all that well received? Not that it really matters, the game itself blows as is. Tom and Jerry Frantic Antics is a Sega Genesis game developed by Beam Software and published by High Tech Expressions. The game being a non-linear side-scrolling platformer. Now, the reason why I didn't give a synopsis for the movie is because I'm going to use the movie to help explain the game since the game itself doesn't tell a coherent story that well. There's no cutscenes or anything, not even a wall of text explaining anything. All we get is quick instructions in between stages, and that doesn't really say what's going on very well. So let's just get to the game. The first stage, the street. This is actually the beginning of the movie. Kind of. Basically, Tom's owner is moving, and because Tom and Jerry's own antics, they get left behind. As such, Tom is being chased by a dog and needs to escape to their older residence since their owner is out of the question. So, in this stage, in single player anyway, we play as Tom, and despite the warning at the beginning of the stage, Spike is barely in this level. So, no better time like now than to go over the gameplay. As previously stated, the game is a platformer, and not only does it mostly not make any sense, it doesn't play well at all. Not to mention the stage looks nothing like the movie. If changing the title and all that was to further yourself from the movie, then you've already failed. The title screen of the game shows all the major characters from the movie, so you've already as well as succeeded in one thing and actually make the stage look like the city that they were in the film. As previously stated, the stage makes no sense. There are death pits all over the street. I mean, what happened to this town? Floating platform, death pits, rats with rifles, rats on scooters. Most of these are enemies from all the stages. And just some random house here and there. What kind of city codes does this town have? Anyway, that aside, the controls are bad. First off, they are slippery. Basically, Tom, or Jerry for that matter, will slip with running and jumping on a platform, and thus you'll be sliding all over the place. This is in part with the jumping controls. The jumping is bad. The only way you can get reliable jumps is to run and jump, which is fine in video games, but you have to jump so often it's hard to control, and with all the platforming, and because of how slippery this is, it's much harder than it really needs to be. In each stage, there's a throwing weapon, and it's different in each stage. This is basically your only weapon against enemies. You do have this spin attack thing, but it's not that great. I guess they were trying to purposely be like classic Sonic, you know, with the run and then spin thing. But while that actually was reliable to use, in this game it is not. Well, with all that said, that's pretty much the whole stage in a nutshell. Oh, but we do see Spike. Kinda. You see, this isn't the Spike we know and love from the TV series. No, this is just some random dog that's in the movie, and even though the dog is in the film, I don't believe in being named, and I'm pretty sure that wasn't Spike. Oh, and all you have to do is jump over him and you win, by the way. Woo. Stage 2, living room. So this part of the movie is basically Tom nailed Jerry into the wall and is trapped inside the house because of the dog. He sleeps for the night but is woken up from the house being wrecked. He escapes but realizes he left Jerry in the house. Unable to live with himself, he runs back inside the house to save Jerry. Alright, back to the game, and once again this stage makes little sense. Oh, I'm not referring to the stage's layout so much, more so the fact that this house has like 30 TVs, several couches, and grandfather clocks, and a bunch of bowling balls. Throughout the stage, you'll have to avoid a wrecking ball while trying to avoid exploding televisions. So with all these couches, they act like trampolines, but because of this garbage jumping controls, this is much harder than it should be. In all seriousness, the stage isn't that hard, it's just because of all these stupid jumping on couches, it makes it that much harder. Even with the whole wrecking ball, isn't all that hard to avoid, which is ironic because that's how Tom and Jerry get out of the house in the movie. So we find the nailed up hole and we beat the level, Jerry saying they should stick together. Stage 3, the alley. The end of the last stage isn't entirely accurate to the movie. Basically, after Tom saves Jerry, he wants to go on his own, but Jerry wants to stick with Tom. Eventually, after meeting this dog and a flea, who are not in this game, but are in the title screen of the game, and for some weird reason, they realize they should stick together. Oh yeah, this is also the scene that made a lot of people hate this movie.
I'm Tom.
I'm Jerry.
You talked! Well, sure I talk. What do you think I am, a dummy?
You said it. I didn't.
While I agree that Tom and Jerry shouldn't talk for the most part, I wasn't as angry about this as others. I guess because technically both Tom and Jerry have talked in the original cartoons a few times, but they were mostly silent characters. Personally, I think Rob Zombie's Michael Myers being able to talk was a bigger insult than having Tom and Jerry talk. Anyway, after a couple musical numbers and Jerry saving Tom, they agreed to stick together.
Come on, Mouse.
Alright, back to the game. This stage, this time we're playing as Jerry, but despite the name of the stage, it's mostly a sewer level. Because sewer levels are always fun. Okay, in all seriousness, this one actually is one of the most tolerable sewer levels I've ever played in a game, but it still sucks. Once again, we're back to rats all over the place with rifles and whatnot, but we have a few new enemies. One of them is actually in the movie, being a cat throwing trash can lids, a swimming rat, fish, and octopuses. You know, whatever the American sewer system has. Truly, the only thing that makes this stage difficult is really the fact that the time can kill you. Oh, did I forget to mention that? Yeah, there's this time limit thing on each stage. For the most part, you'll probably won't have to worry about it too much, but there are times, a couple of stages that, yeah, you'll probably time out and you don't know where you're going. Also, we're introduced to swimming, and it's annoying, but it's a good thing that Jerry, as far as I can tell anyway, can't run out of air. Jerry swims slowly and can't speed up, so you'll have to worry about fish and all that other stuff, and they are much faster. Yeah, keep an eye out for cheese because you're going to need it, and it's not really that hard, it's just you'll need a bit of patience. At the end of the stage, we meet up with Robin. In the movie, she meets up with Tom and Jerry and befriends them after telling them she missed her dad, who may very well be dead. Upon doing so, the police find her and she's taken back to her abusive guardian, Aunt Fig, but keeps Tom and Jerry around. It's worth noting that the only reason why Aunt Fig and the lawyer care for her is so they will continue to get money from her father's money. There's actually a pretty big part of the movie after this, and I'm surprised that it didn't get a stage. Either way, we go to a different part of the game and a different part of the movie. Stage 4, the library. Basically, once again, as Jerry, we are looking for a telegram from Robin's dad. So we're platforming again, and once again this house is littered with rats with rifles. You know, rats suck for people and cats and mice as is. They don't need guns too. Although, they do have a bit of variation this time, as some of them have books. And these books are apparently sentient. I know I've complained about the ludicrous setup of each stage, but this one is all over the place. Secret doors, going through dressers and all that. Not to mention, you're getting attacked everywhere. And there's not that much ink bottles, the stage's weapon, to fight them all. Not to mention, there's a time limit, so you're stressing to get the stage done very fast. Also, for whatever reason, the telegram is in 2 pieces, so you have to go all over the stage and to get them both in order to finish the stage. So, yeah. Oh boy. So after you find the 2 pieces, you win the stage. Referring back to the movie, basically, Tom and Jerry find the telegram, but Aunt Fig finds that Tom and Jerry found it, and before they can tell Robin, takes them to a vet called Dr. Applecheeks, and who is actually not a vet, and is really more so just running a dog pound. So back to the game, and there's a bit of confusion. We're playing as Tom in this stage, and that doesn't make that much sense to me. In the movie, it was Jerry that did most of the work. At first, I thought it was just a simple switching of characters every 2 stages, but we'll see that's not the case later. Whatever. Stage 5. Basement. Again, we play as Tom, and this one is a bit more difficult. Again, this place is littered with rats with guns. This one is a little more annoying for 2 reasons. Again, this stage has 2 objectives. You gotta release all the dogs from their cages and find a way to escape yourself. Secondly, this stage is big, and another one I struggle to get out on time because it goes all over the place. Aside from the 2 separate objectives and the fact that even after you release the dogs, they stay in their cages and nothing really changes, there truly is nothing noteworthy about this stage. Only other thing that has any kind of uniqueness about it is one of the enemies, is one of the dog catchers from the movie. Actually, like most of the characters, Dr. Applecheeks is nowhere in the game except for the main menu. So, you escape the pound, and we're back to the movie. Basically, Tom and Jerry go back to Robin and tell her about the telegram, and she once again plans to run away with the 2 of them. Stage 6. The Addict. This is just crap they made for the game. It's not in the movie in any way, shape, or form. Basically, as Jerry, you have to find Robin's backpack and Robin herself. The stage is no different than the others, really, other than the fact that you have to worry about being electrocuted due to water being on train tracks. Oh, I haven't really mentioned any of the sound effects of this game, have I? Oh, they'll etch themselves into your ears forever. More specifically, the falling sound. You'll hear it a lot in this game, but this stage... Again, this jumping is your worst enemy, as platforms are hard to get to and because the jumping is not reliable. This is another stage where the time can really screw you over. This is hardly the worst stage, but it feels like a complete waste of time, especially since it wasn't in the movie and it doesn't add to anything. The only other thing that's worth noting is, aside from being one of the largest and most confusing attic there is, there's a bunch of mini cranes in the attic because... So we find the backpack and Robin, and we are on the move to the next stage. In the movie, Robin, Tom, and Jerry go back to the bridge and use a river to escape after Fig, her dog, and a lawyer try to capture her. The 3 of them split up thanks to a large ship. Robin wakes up in a carnival by a Captain Kitty, while Tom and Jerry end up elsewhere. Alright, so there's kind of a gap here, but basically the lawyer, Mr. Lickboot, plans on trying to get Robin back by having a fake $1 million reward on a milk carton. Basically, the captain and his hand puppet seize the reward and trap her on a Ferris wheel, and it's up to Tom and Jerry to save her. Believe it or not, I'm actually kind of leaving a few details out on that. Stage 7, Carnival. Once again, we're Jerry, and we merely need to get to the end of the stage. It's basically like the first stage, except that there's no death pits and it's just a bunch of water. What is kind of interesting is the fact that you can actually play through this level pretty much entirely underwater or out of it. It doesn't really seem to matter, really both of them are just as difficult as the others, so swim or jump. As previously stated, this doesn't really follow that much into the movie anymore. Ironically, this stage makes the most sense compared to the others. But again, a huge part of the story is missing. It was just... we're in the attic, and all of a sudden we're in the carnival. The carnival itself doesn't remotely look like it does in the movie, not to mention it's daytime in the movie, and here it's nighttime. This is more like a theme park than a carnival. Heck, the only thing that ties this movie at all accurately is the fact that the weapon in this game is the milk cartons. And like the last stage, despite the warning in the beginning, we only see a glimpse of the captain. And nothing happens. Even less than the dog, actually. And we win. Referring to the movie, there's again a lot of potential that could have been a fun stage, or at least had a lot of sense to be a stage. Basically, 3 of them use a steamboat while Fig and Lickboot chase them in a car, Dr. Applecheeks is using an ice cream cart, and the captain is using an inflatable boat to chase after them. They outrun them, but Robin realizes that they're on the way to their father's cabin, named Robin's Nest, and they set their way there. Am I the only one thinking there was a missed potential to actually kind of make something out of that? Upon arrival, due to Lickboot being a lawyer and knows much about her, knows where she is going, and confronts them. And through a set of contrivances, the place is set ablaze. Okay, back to the game. The last stage, the cabin. Appropriately, this is indeed the hardest stage, but again, doesn't make that much sense. Really, it's like all the other stages, excluding the last. It's constant platforming with terrible jumping, just as Tom. However, this stage takes it to a whole new level. Aside from the terrible jumping, you'll have to constantly worry about fire conveniently falling on you. This happens constantly and it kills you. The jump controls are garbage, and actually adding getting shot every now and then doesn't help matters. Okay, in other stages there were like falling chandeliers and all that stuff, but man, these fireballs are constant. Another thing they added was this water. Apparently Robin's dad felt the need to keep the water dispensers around the cabin for this entire eventuality. With these, you can drink the water and you can spit it out to put out fire. And that's pretty much it. At one point, this actually messes you up though. After you drink the water, not only can you not run or jump, you can't attack either. Not only that, if you spit the water out in front of the dispenser, Tom will automatically drinks it again, so you can't run away or attack. You just have to know where they are at and get rid of the threat before you get to the water. You know, this really could have been remedied if you just had a proper action button. Just saying. So there's one last thing that makes this stage unique though. We actually have a boss fight, specifically with Aunt Fig. And she's not hard. Just throw a few sticks that you find at her, and then you roll around her, and then you win.
Oh, Daddy, I knew you'd come.
So, how does it end? Well, in the movie, Robin reunites with her father, and they adopt Tom and Jerry in their mansion. After they get settled, the two of them go back to their old antics. In this game, Tom and Jerry watch TV, and the news thanks them for reuniting Robin and her father. And that's it. Tom and Jerry Frantic Antics is a badly programmed and irritating platformer that fails even as an adaptation to the original movie. Boring music, irritating sound effects, bad controls, and generally not fun. The nicest thing that can be said is that the graphics aren't bad. It's mostly colorful, and the animation with Tom and Jerry themselves anyway look alright. Regardless of your opinion on film, the game isn't good. I would say look at the other Tom and Jerry games, but I don't know if they're any better to be honest. So do yourself a favor and just watch the original Tom and Jerry. Or you can watch the movies. Or the modern series. Whichever.